It is the day after in Washington, after the big health care vote, and the abortion debate continues to rage on, even after the health care bill cleared the House. Congressman Bart Stupak, a pro-lifer from the Democratic side, says an executive order signed by the president solves his concerns over taxpayer funding for abortion. But the pro-life movement says that's nonsense. Now it appears the battle is even hotter than before. Marjorie Dannenfelser is with a pro-life group called the Susan B. Anthony List. That's the group that's just revoked Bart Stupak's award. It was called the Defender of Life Award. And Jamu Green is president of the Women's Media Center, and she is from the pro-choice side. Afternoon, ladies. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, Megan.
All right, so Marjorie, let me start with you, because I assume you saw the interview with Congressman Stupak, and he came out and basically said, look, this is the best I could do. And, you know, I fought to the end, but this is the best I could do. You say it's not good enough.
I saw that. It gave me deep sorrow to watch. Congressman Stupak had all the legislative power in his hands to do exactly what he said he wanted to do, which is to undermine, frankly, the Senate position and the president's position and put his in legislative language. He had all the power. He gave it away for a piece of paper that cannot stand legislative nor judicial muster, and then went on to vote against his own language in a motion to recommit and impugn the motives of the pro-life movement and the pro-life members of the leadership in the Republican Party, saying that somehow trying to vote for his language was cynical. It really was a bad day for Bart Stupak.
Jamu, you're from the other side, and you're also unhappy with Bart Stupak. He's getting it from both sides, which he says means it must be a good piece of legislation. What do you say?
Well, definitely Bart Stupak made his stand, but ultimately he ended up caving. He failed. He intended to stop women from using their own money to be able to purchase abortions, and that is not what happened. I think we do need to stop and take a moment and recognize that the health care bill that passed last night is historic. It is landmark legislation. There are pieces of this bill that are going to provide for women not to be considered a pre-existing condition, for women to actually access insurance to cover their birth control. This is landmark legislation. But it is also a bittersweet moment, because we are looking at a very significant rollback in reproductive rights and basically stopping low-income women from being able to access reproductive health care. And that is a serious issue that has to be addressed. But in relationship to Bart Stupak, he failed. He has an agenda, as does the Susan B. Anthony List, which is to have the government intrude and come into my home, come into your home, and insist on a medical decision that the government wants to see happen. That's not what this bill does. But there is work that has to come out of this, and I think we're going to see engagement, because women are now focused on these really
long answers in a 3-minute segment. Marjorie, I'll give you the chance to respond.
Okay, 2 points here. One is there was a deafening silence on the part of the feminist movement in the last 4 days. I believe that they were not so worried about this executive order. Number two, we are not talking about outlawing abortion. We're talking about the 80% view that we all not be involved in every single abortion that occurs in this country by paying for it. And this current language, what the president will sign, is exactly that. We will all be participating. This is a dramatic change in current policy, and we ought to all feel now culpable in every single abortion that occurs in this country that is part of this plan.
You know, Jamu, Bart Stupak seems to feel that this executive order does crack down on public funding for abortion, and he seems to think that it will keep the Hyde Amendment, which bans public funding for abortion except in limited cases like rape or incest. He thinks that the executive order will keep that Hyde Amendment in place, period, end of report. Do you agree?
Well, the Hyde Amendment in and of itself is a long-standing, shameful provision that stops low-income women from accessing reproductive health. And, you know, it is somewhat meaningless that Bart Stupak and his gang of anti-choice holdouts had to be placated with this executive order. I think the real issue is now to work to defeat Hyde and to make sure that, you know, we are continuing to protect a woman's right to choose, which is a legal right and a human right. And actually, the ability for a woman to access and abortion being left out of this health care reform. It is the only medical decision, medical activity that is left out of the health care reform legislation. And that in itself is a travesty, and that is something that women will not stand for.
If you defeat the Hyde Amendment by legislation, are you concerned that this executive order will somehow stand in your way of getting public funding for abortion?
No. No.
And Marjorie, do you agree with that? That if the pro-choice movement gets the Hyde Amendment repealed, that Barack Obama's executive order will do nothing to prevent public funding of abortion?
Absolutely right. And this is why the group of pro-choice caucus in the House of Representatives didn't go full bore against this executive order. They clearly were okay with it. They clearly got their votes, all those 40 votes, and the bill passed. This is the one area, the largest area of bipartisan consensus in the entire health care debate. Republican, Democrat, every demographic, 60, 70, 80% of the people say health care, yes, perhaps, but certainly not abortion. It is not my job to fund other people's abortions.
Well, the reality is abortion is health care. 1 in 3 women will have an abortion in her lifetime. And I know that there are women who are excited about what this legislation does and the access that it provides for so many necessary services, but also will not stand to see the largest rollback in reproductive rights happen on our watch, and that fight will continue.
Well, as you can see, not a lot was resolved by the executive order, but listen, we appreciate you both coming on to try to flesh out the issues with us. Marjorie, Jamu, all the best to you both.